The guy who went up there posted pictures of the bell. He says the thing is about 1,200 to 1,500 pounds. It's huge. It was done in 1856. I'm trying to get him to move up and just,
I can only hear one address. I put the gym, and I'm not deaf.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right. It is good to be with you. I feel like I might have just seen you. We were, but so the good news is you don't have to listen to me talk more, maybe a little bit more. But Carrie Taylor is going to start us off with our conversation. And so I thank her for her help because she has been navigating the joys of this project for a while now. So.
Yes, when my husband and I bought a house and we realized that there's a lot of maintenance to be done, we call it the joys of home ownership. Well, we have the joys of church ownership that we're dealing with. So thank you all for staying this afternoon. The leadership board's been dealing with water issues in the bell tower, and we want to share with you where we are with this. We also want to get your thoughts and answer any questions you have. The bell tower, as many of you might know, has been repaired, worked on several times over the years. It was last worked on in 2014. This past year, we had the slate roof repaired, and problems with the bell tower have come to fore again. So the leadership board has worked with 2 different companies to try and figure out how to solve this, and we've chosen to work with Frost Building Maintenance, who has done work for us before. And we want to share with you what Frost has shared with the board. So if we can see the pictures. The red door, you can see clearly the rusting lintel. We've already contracted with them to have that repaired. But it does show you how the rust, the way he describes it, the rust flakes expand and push against the masonry around it. The picture on the right is inside the bell tower, and the steel that is in there is also rusting. And as the rust flakes expand, it's breaking up the clay tile and the masonry around that. So the leaking is also structural damage up there. So Frost has done other repairs, and when we called him back to look at the bell tower, he was curious to figure out why are the repairs in the bell tower not holding up like the repairs he's done in other parts of the church. And the conclusion he came to is that the heat from the church building does not get all the way up into the bell tower. And so freezing and thawing are having a greater effect on the structure up there than it has in other parts of the building. So that's why we're getting more damage. So here's a proposed solution. So let's go to the next slide. Is to actually remove the bell tower, bring it down, so that that problem doesn't exist anymore. Now, this is a concept picture, and actually the upper part of it would be just a little bit higher and look a little bit more like the old structure. So we might as well go to the next one. These are architectural drawings of the difference. So given that the problem seems to be that heat doesn't get all the way up into the bell tower, and for years that's probably been the reason for the freezing, thawing, cracking of the masonry that lets the water in, that rusts the metal, as we see over that red door. If you want to see that red door in person, it's the one that's just right outside the stairs at the front. We also have a couple of windows that are also having their steel lintels repaired. That's already been contracted for. It's a matter of waiting for weather. But this is going to be one major repair. And we'd like to get your input on what you think is the best way for us to go. So let's go to the last one. Why don't you get me out of there? Thank you. Okay. So we've looked at it in a few different ways. We can just remove the top of the tower where the heat doesn't get and it's constantly breaking up and rusting and we get leaks. Or we can spend more and try to maintain the tower that's up there with repairs. Or we could save the money and do absolutely nothing, and it will take, in about 10 to 15 years, it will just collapse. I know, it's not a lot of good options out there. So that's been real brief and real quick, so I'm open to questions because there's probably a lot more you want to know. Feel free.
Is this a historical building?
It is. It was built in 1927, and we thought about getting a historical designation. I also discovered that at one point there was a large chimney that was taken down. The tops of the bell tower has already had changes to it, so I doubt we would qualify as a historical building. And if we did, all kinds of restrictions come with being designated historical. We would have to get approved.
That's my question. Can we take down the tower?
Yes, we can. We have not been declared a historical building. So that, yes. Sandy?
If you do the replace and rebuild, you're still not going to get heat up there, so the same thing's going to keep happening, correct?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, so what Greg said about that specifically is that they would rebuild it. Basically, they would take it completely off and build a completely new one. So it would be newer materials, new steel. So it would be okay for, 70 years or so, like the current one is, right? The current one's been up there for 100-ish years. So it would be all new materials, so it would be more weather resistant and things like that. But eventually, yes, down the road then, as things get older, this problem would potentially come back up because, again, the heat won't be getting up there.
I was wondering, how would we fund option A or B?
I was expecting this. We were expecting this question. Do you want to answer this, or would you like me to answer this?
We can afford at least option A in some ways we want, but we don't want to diminish or use up all our funding to do that. We would want to have some kind of capital funds campaign to get everyone to help assist in that because we're going to have future maintenance of the building and ministries that we want to do here at the church that we want to fund. So we don't want to use up all of our, resources. So option B, that one I'm not so sure of because that's so much more.
Yeah, so that is the challenge, right, is weighing the immediate need with also our future want, desires, and needs for ministry. So that is the challenge. So we're looking into all of that. Michael.
Yeah, one of the features of a church is bell. If we go for option A, we lose the bell.
So Michael's asking, would we lose the bell? And we would, if you remove the tower, obviously the bell cannot be on top of the tower. But that does not mean that the bell goes away. We would have to see what all our choices are, but the bell is still ours. So even if they remove the top of the tower, the bell will come down. It's up to us what we want to see done with it. So we would be able to have discussions about where we think the bell should go. Should it stay here somewhere? Should it go somewhere?
Well, can I say that the bell is like 2 feet tall, 3 feet in diameter, and weighs 12 to 1,500 pounds?
It's a little bit bigger than the bell that I used a few weeks ago.
Because I think some people have thought we could have taken the bell and put it somewhere on church property, but considering the size, that's going to be a challenge. But, I mean, it's an option. We haven't looked into that. Frost says that usually what churches do is you can get a little more than scrap if you can find a purchaser. I mean, this bell was built by Jones and Hitchcock, founders from Troy, New York in 1856. The company went out of business in 1887, so they haven't been around for a while. But
In dealing with bells, you're going to get at the most $700.
Yeah, so the bell will not fund the tower. No. Right. If that's what you were thinking.
it's not a wanted antique, especially when you consider the size of it.
Yeah. And so the other thing about the bell, which if you were listening to what Carrie said about the years, means that the bell is already used before it came to us. So if it's not that it was our bell that we made ourselves either. So it's had a long, rich history of clanging.
How often does it clang?
We have not clanged it in a while. There was some concern about the state of the cradle that holds the bell, given the state of the tower. And Frost did say that the cradle, which is what holds all 1,500 pounds or so, is okay but not great. And so we kind of felt like it was probably a good idea not to be up there rotating that thing around a whole bunch. So Bill Cook used to go and ring it every Sunday after worship, and it's been quiet for a few months because of that. So, what other questions? Doris.
So you mentioned historic registry. We may or may not need to do that, and you gave us a couple of disadvantages, but what would be an advantage? Would it mean money if we were to become?
I don't know that any of us are like experts on it, but I don't believe there's funding if you're a historical building that anyone knows of. I know Mike Collins talked about visiting a church in Atlanta, I think, that is on the registry and they don't get fancy funding. So I don't think there's too many advantages beyond you get a nice plaque. But they don't give you money to keep it looking the way that it looks. I saw Joy first.
Is the damage reserved strictly to up there, or is it affecting other parts of upstairs, fourth floor, third floor? Or is the damage simply confined to the tower?
The worst of the damage is confined to the tower. And the tower is what's causing the majority of the moisture to come in that area of the building. Now, if you look at the room that we're in, you will notice that there are also spots in here that are affected by the moisture, and the nature of that is that our building is almost 100 years old, and so that is a challenge. But up at the top of the stairs, the majority of the leaking that is happening up there, and so it's in some closets up there, it's literally in the top of the tower. That is due mostly to the bell tower because of the fact that it's cracking so much and so much moisture is coming down, going sideways. One of the things that Greg told us when he was here on Wednesday is that they were very innovative during the Industrial Revolution, not resolution. And so a lot of the bell tower is made out of something called clay tile, which is to look like a brick, but is not actually a brick. And so when water gets in it, it's kind of hollow, and the water can just kind of follow the flow. And so the inside of the bell tower is clay tile, not brickwork. So when water gets in it, it travels, and that's how it's getting into the building, is it's kind of water falling its way down inside and into the building. So, Nancy, you had your hand up.
I wanted to know what the timeline is that program board has for making this decision.
We need to make the decision pretty quickly because he says it's going to be like a 3-month project and he needs nice weather to do it. So, and he needs some lead time to get architectural work done and then order materials. So we're hoping that maybe that he could begin in late June, early July, and there would be scaffolding around that tower for 3 months through the summer. And for him to do that, we need to give him a decision, I'm thinking by the end of February, the very beginning of March. So it's a pretty quick decision unless we're going to delay it until next summer.
So one of the things that I did, because I try to follow the rules sometimes, although we all know, but I did reach out to the district superintendent and I said, hey, we are looking at our options because we have this leak, and one of our options is taking off the top of the bell tower and removing it, and that would cost some money, and we would like to have a capital funds campaign to go along with that. Do I need to have a congregational vote officially to do that? And he said yes, which means that in February, once we've heard back from Frost on some questions that he was running down for the board, that we will have to schedule a meeting, which means that there's official 2 weeks notice, and either the DS or another pastor who is an ordained elder has to come, and we will oversee that meeting, which means that, so I want you to know that today is not a vote, and it is not a final decision on what we are doing. What we're hoping is that you will lift up your questions, and we could have this time of conversation so that we as the board have a sense of where we feel the congregation might be leaning, but that we will have to have an official vote in February. And so if you do have questions that come out of this, I hope that you will either give them to us as the board. You can find a board member. If you say to yourself, who's on the board? It was in the newsletter, which is the pastoral joke, right? It was in the newsletter, it was in the bulletin. So it was in the newsletter. So you can find it there, but many of them are here. Mike is on the board, Colleen is on the board, Brett is on the board. I'm on everything. I don't get a vote though. And Kathy Flager is on the board. Carrie is on the board. And so there are many of us on the board that are running around, and you can find that in the newsletter. But you can give us those questions as well. So we will have to have an official vote in February, but yes, Greg did say that the timeline would be tight in terms of wanting to make sure that if we needed it to happen this year, that we would need to have some decisions made sooner than later so that we can make everything happen. Now, there was a bunch of hands before I started talking, so, yeah.
I know you had to have approved plans for some of this other work from the city, right? They had to approve that. Do we have that?
Greg has talked to the city already and has been told that, given what he shared with them, we will have no problem getting their approval.
The last church that I went through just went through the same problem. And it was a structural damage to the church because of the leakage. They went through insurance and got part of it.
We can try, but this has been such a long-standing problem. We've had repair after repair after repair. We can check.
So was theirs. I'm being very, very serious.
Okay.
Theirs
No,
was-
that's a
theirs
good,
was the same thing. They didn't get all of it, but they got part of it.
okay, all right. Mary Ann, you had your hand up?
I was just wondering, is there any timeline on how he wants to be paid? Like, do we have to have so much down, or,
I'm sure there's money that has to be down. And so,
we could pay?
oh yeah, there will be pieces.
Okay, I'm thinking, what do we do best as Memphis? We eat.
Give them a wheel.
No, I think she's leading us toward fundraisers. Yeah.
A lot of this talks to the
Yeah, and like any repair you would have at your own home, we would never pay the full amount until the work is completely done and approved. So yes, you're talking about payments as we go. Probably payments for architect work. He shared a cute story that the architect came with a very new member of his office that was a young woman who now learned that to be an architect, she also has to crawl up ladders into dark, scary holes. So, but we'll have to pay for that kind of work. So there will be steps to this.
How much is in the blessing fund, and is the blessing fund going to pay for this?
So Michael asked the question, how much is in the blessing fund? Okay? And I'm going to be transparent, because transparency is important. But I want to begin, before I tell you that number, by reminding you of this, that what we're attempting to do is to be the best stewards of all that we have. Because, as we know, we want to fund not only the ministry we're doing now, but we also want to plan for our sustainability for the future to be our best selves in 10 years, in 20 years, and beyond, right? And I'm going to be here for all of that if the DS is watching this. So, we do have a lot of money. Let me rephrase this. We do have a good amount of money in our blessings fund. We have roughly $588,000 in our blessings fund, but we are aware of how we got the blessings fund. And so if you do not know, the blessings fund is largely comprised of funds that we got from sale of property. And so we do not want to just take all of that and put it into this project and put ourselves in a situation where we don't have anything in the future, which means that, yes, some of the blessing fund is likely, I'm saying is likely, I'm not saying is going to be, is likely to be utilized for this project, but our hope is that we will also tap into other means of generosity and other means of fundraising, as Marianne has lifted up already.
And possibly insurance.
And maybe even insurance, as I have made a note to check. And so we want to be the best stewards of what we have. So the Blessings Fund is there to help us with this, but we also want to make sure that it will be there to help us with other things going forward. So, because, I'll tell you a story that I told Carrie, because I think it ties into this conversation. So last week, I took my car into the car dealership because all my lights came on. Has that ever happened to you guys? Okay. No, never. So all my lights came on, so I took it in, and they called me, and they said, there's a crack in your PCV pipe and valve, and it's like $140 to fix it. And I said, I like the sound of that. And they said, but. And I said, what do you mean, but? And he said, but you have oil leaking from the top and the bottom of your engine, and it's going to cost you $5,500 to fix that, because we have to take the engine all the way out of the car. And I said, maybe I should trade my car in, right? So the reality of churches is that we cannot, right, call up the church dealership and say, our bell tower has a really bad leak and it's going to be expensive to fix it. Can we please trade up into a new church, right? That's not how church works. I wish. That could be pretty nifty, don't you think? But unfortunately, we cannot call the church dealership and trade up like you can do with a car. And so what that means is that we are kind of in this spot where the three options on the screen are kind of the three best options that seem to be before us at this juncture. And so that's why we're trying to determine how to best use our funds. Johnny, you have a question.
If we end up waiting until next year, which is throughout the whole year, is it possible to put heaters, humidifiers to slow damage from being worse?
So the question Johnny asked is, if we wait a year, can we put heaters and humidifiers? Are you asking like physically in the bell tower or just in the building itself?
Wherever it needs to be.
Yeah. So there's a couple of, so that's the question. Can you put heaters and humidifiers in there, dehumidifiers? So there's a couple challenges with that. The first is that we would need to put them in the bell tower itself, which is not, I don't believe, insulated. So I don't know that a heater would make too much difference. And also, if you've been up there, it's a trap door up a ladder, so I don't want to carry a heater up that. But my other concern would be then you plug it in up there, is it running, is it going to catch fire? You know, the biggest challenge is that when we began this conversation with Greg, the number on the top, 315, is what he threw at us as a ballpark for this project. And that was in September of last year. And when he met with us last week on Wednesday night, he said it could be up to 350. And that change is he likened that due to something called inflation. Now, I don't know if you all have heard of this. But apparently it's a thing where stuff gets more expensive, so they say. That's part of the challenge as well with the project that we're trying to deal with, is that we want to make sure we don't kick the can too far until I asked him that question, how long until it just falls down, and he said 10 to 15 years, depending on weather. And so what we don't want to do is just continue to say, well, that's next year's problem, and then find ourselves in a situation where it's now $500,000 or even more to do this work as well. So, you know, we've been running dehumidifiers up at the top of the stairs to try and help, and it has helped a little bit, but not too much. So, Joy. No, I'm sorry. Beth, I'm sorry. I pivoted and I was like that, and then I apologize.
I wonder what that could be from. All right. Anyway, if we go with either option A or option B, do they have built-in stop guards so that we don't have the problem ever again?
Well, if we do option A, the stop guard is that it's gone. So that pretty much takes care of that. Now there will be a buffer. Can you back up, Johnny, to the one of the two that look like blueprints? Yeah. So there will be a slight buffer between the top and the bottom of a floor that will help with insulation. And they're also going to slope the roof so that it will drain, and it will drain externally, which is a nifty thing, I've been told. And so that way it will make sure that the water is not going to be sitting on there, it won't be getting into it and freezing and things like that. But basically the building will stop at the top of the stairs. So there won't be too much above it that is going to be external to not be getting heated.
Right, I understand. I just wanted to make sure there was something built in so that it would divert or
Yes.
stop the problem.
Yes, we haven't, he has not run down for us as much of the specifics on option B due to cost, but you know, if we were to do something where you completely take it off and then rebuild a new one, I would assume that they would incorporate drainage features, but they're not going to put a heating system, I don't think, in it. But yeah, the A and B both involve drainage, obviously, in order to try and rectify as much as possible. So.
If you're asking me, A is the choice.
Yeah. Were there any other questions about?
And the photograph that we showed that showed what it would look like with the top chopped off is not exactly what it will look like, because Greg Frost did this himself. And if you look at the architectural drawing, there's a little more decoration at the very top that he doesn't show there. So it's not going to look quite as simple and plain. Greg Frost was a joy to listen to that evening because he really cares about old buildings like this. He really does want it to look good and not just that someone drives by and goes, oh, they must have chopped off their bell tower. He wants it to look like it was always that way. And he's very conscious of that.
The highest part, as you look at the front of the church, that bell tower is still going to be the highest thing that you see.
Yes, when the photograph having blue sky behind it, it doesn't show the rest of the church. So he said he was conscious of that they'll have to take it down so far that they'll actually build up a little bit more after what they take down in order to make it look like this is how the church always looked. This is the proper decoration that was up there.
Will these slides be posted to our website for further perusal? Can they be?
I know a guy, yeah. Yeah, I can put these on our website if you want to take a look at them. I will figure out where to put them. I don't have a specific spot. I don't want to put them in a weird spot. So I'll figure out where to put them this week, and then I will send an email out once they are up, and I will put the link to that spot in there. So, one of the things that we're conscious of is, as well, this conversation is going out live, but is also being recorded, so that those, who are not with us might be able to peruse it. I didn't get any texts from anybody with any questions or comments. But, I intentionally did not put it out via our Facebook because I didn't want, who's watching Facebook? And so, as well, I will make sure there's a spot for this conversation on our website, but I won't, just like you guys probably don't want, like, everybody in the neighborhood knowing your business, right? Why is the plumber in your driveway? None of your business, that's why, Greg. So, same thing, we don't, do that stuff. So, I saw a hand.
The part that they're gonna put on, that's like a rope so that the water drains away from the building, is that gonna be like at some kind of peak so that it runs down?
No, it'll be a flat roof, as you can see in the design concept, but inside of the little tower, like you could climb up there if you really want, like when it's done, but inside of the little tower, it'll be like a flat roof, but it'll have a slope to it. So it won't just be like flat and perfectly level, it'll be flat with a slope so that all the water is funneled in a specific direction. Yep. Yeah. So, no, there won't be like a tiny little like triangle up there or anything like that you can see.
And I assume that the charter conference will be scheduled as soon as we can manage to do it, so this doesn't drag on for too long.
Yeah, so we will, so the DS already said, let's schedule something in February. So I will reach out to him and we'll find a time to have that, that vote. And so conversation. And so if you do have questions, I know sometimes it's intimidating to raise your hand and chuck a question out in the middle of this. But please do seek out someone on the board and ask that question that maybe they won't know the answer, but they can find someone on the board who will know the answer. You can text me, you can email Carrie, anyone else on the board. Please don't text or email Bill Cook. He's on vacation, and that's not nice to him, just as we would hope that we wouldn't be texting and emailing you when you're on vacation. So, but anybody else on the board right now can hopefully either answer that question or find out for you that answer, because that is always an okay answer to somebody's question. I don't know, but I'll find out. So, but we will put this online. So, Doris.
If we were to decide to use the tower, would we have to worry about for another 70 years, or?
I don't know, but I can find out if you would like. I can email Greg Frost and ask that question.
Let's put it this way, we won't have the water damage we have now. Maintenance will still have to happen on this 100-year-old building, as you can see where we get plaster bubbling, because the building is brick and plaster, which loves to suck up water.
Yeah.
And so that's part of that's why we want to save some of our funds to continue to maintain this old structure. But as far as the towers goes, Greg is telling us that, well, there won't be a tower.
Well, no. Doris is asking if we do option B.
Oh, if we maintain the tower, I'm assuming there will be things that over time will come up because it is still an open, unheated area with stone and brick.
So it might be good for, a while, but who knows how long that is until other issues arise. So.
Actually, we're blessed that this 97-year-old building is only just now causing us to repair some of these steel structures. I guess Greg has done some
I'm knocking on wood.
other parts of the building already, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's the nature of the metal that they used at the time, which was state-of-the-art at the time. Yes, Becky?
When we looked at first of all, kudos to the leadership board, because this is not an easy decision. With everybody who's served on trustees, it's like the monster behind the curtain in the bell tower. And for decades, I remember my dad talk about it. But when we looked at, had the drone go over and looked at all the slates here, there was over 220 slates that were bad and some valleys. And when I asked him, what
Yeah. Yeah. Michael.
I'm so relieved you haven't used a sledgehammer, a work order to Mike and Dale to it.
Well, that was option D. Option D was Michael and Dale. No.
Couldn't afford the health insurance.
No, thank you. Get me up that ladder. Oh, yeah.
Please, if anything comes up, after you have time to run this over in your heads, email, text, ask, whatever. Because we want everyone to feel comfortable with this, because there's gonna be some fundraising involved, and we want you to feel like this is something you wanna do, you've got into it, and this is how we wanna go.
Yeah.
So, please,
Yeah.
feel free to ask. Give your opinion, it doesn't have to be a question, you can tell us what you think. That's what we're here for.
I'm on the board, we never really talked about this at the board meeting. What will determine how much of that we go for the capital campaign?
That's a really good question. It sounds like something we're probably going to talk about in a board meeting.
I say go for as much as we can get.
So, yeah, I mean, we will, before we would start one, we would set a goal we want to target, and as well. And so we want to use, we don't want to just not utilize that with which we've been blessed. But like I said, we want to be good stewards of it as well. So we'll set a goal that we feel is reasonable, I think, in order and attainable. And then that way we'll still be able to use our blessings and we'll be able to be good stewards. So, I'm hearing many gifts and spirits to fund the bell tower.
I think the comfort level we can have is that when push comes to shove, the funding is there. We just don't want to use it all.
Yeah.
Along with putting in all that stuff online, we also put the surveys online, so we can just vote ABC.
Well, we could do that as a straw poll, if that's what you mean. I can't do that as an official vote. But if you want, I could make a survey that's a straw poll of where the congregation feels like they're at. No, in order for it to be official, we have to have another elder come. Good old United Methodist Church. Mark's laughing. You have to have another elder come. So it would either be the district superintendent or it would need to be a clergy person appointed by the district superintendent in order to come do that. It can't be me. It's one of the few things I can't do, apparently. So, but I can go to other churches. But anyway, so we would have to have that vote in February, and it has to be on that day. Now, if that's going to be a day where there's going to be some issues in terms of either weather or things of that nature, we can explore some options for people to be able to vote remotely. I also know some people are out of town. So what we will do is probably communicate ahead of time. We have to give notice that that meeting's going to happen. So we'll probably communicate ahead of time and say, if you have a vote and you're unable to come, please turn it in ahead of time, probably written, so that we can be able to count it. And so we'll know that way. Does that make sense? So we'll check the rule book. The rule book? Oh, it's a great rule book. It's in my office. Oh, there's a new one, though. Kathy.
Does the district have a vested interest in how we vote, or do they have to vote, or do they have to, are they here to certify our vote, or are they telling us, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't?
So Kathy's question is, does the district have to, how is the district involved? So given the cost of the project and the fact that we would most likely, I'm going to keep myself not 100% on things, that we would most likely not be taking out any kind of a loan that would require financing. I don't believe, to the best of my knowledge, that this is something where the district needs to be involved in terms of approving or disproving the plans. If you're taking out loans, then the conference wants to know, Okay, how are you planning to pay this back? Those types of things. So I think, from the best of my knowledge and the minimal correspondence that I've had thus far with the district superintendent, that is not the case, that it's not that the district is going to come in and say, you have to do this or you can't do this. But they just need us as a church to have an official vote, given the cost and scale of the project, that it is a major change potentially to the building, that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's something where they're going to swoop in and be like, you can't do that. And we'll be like, what? So, Mary Ann.
Would you put a survey out there for people to vote? Are we going to be influenced by people who are not even members here? I mean, anybody can get on the vote or something like that. That worries me.
Yeah. Well, so I think that's why Mark raised that you might need to be in person to vote on that day. And so I think that might be correct. Like I said, I'll double check the rule book. I think what Sherry was, so we would have to, the only thing we would be doing, I don't know that we're going to do it, but it would be like more of a straw poll. Like, where are you as a congregation feeling? Because that might help us in how we approach these conversations, but I can do that right now. If you're comfortable. Is everyone comfortable just throwing your hands up on a straw poll so we get a sense of what questions we might need to answer, what we need to do? All right, so straw poll, not official. Who feels most comfortable with option A? Who feels most comfortable with option B? Who feels most comfortable with option C? Which is do nothing. Okay, so if you have a difference of opinion from that, again, please find us after and we can have that conversation.
Yeah, if you raise your hand because your next door neighbor did, go ahead and say something to us later.
After. So I don't want you to feel intimidated, but we wanted to make sure, the point of today is not to come to an official decision, but what we wanted to do is be transparent and open with where we're at, the conversations that we're having, what things are looking like, the work that we have done, and what lies ahead of us. So that we didn't want to call a charge conference or a church conference in February and have everyone go, what? We're doing what now? And so our hope is that this has been informative and helpful to you so that you have a sense of where we're at, how we've got here, where we might be headed, and that if you do have any questions, find us after and we can feel free to chat. If you joined us online and you have any questions, I don't have any text messages, but email those in, text them to me, email them to somebody on the board. And once we get a spot up for this information to be located so that you can, review the pictures or look at things, I will send that out in an email. So I think that's all that we have for this morning.
I would add one thing, this is just me speaking my opinion. The bell tower does not affect the ministry in this church. Here or gone, we're doing what we do. So.
Well, thank you. I don't have a postlude to get us out. So.